Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the press. On behalf of the committee.
Thank you, Angie Dickinson. I'd like to read this release, which you have a copy of. On 7th of March of this year, 600 citizens of our country met in Chicago, Illinois, to protest the massive repression of black, red, brown, and yellow Americans and the wave of brutal racist terror being waged against the Black Panther Party. In a resolution unanimously adopted, the Continuations Committee of that conference was mandated to prepare a petition to the United Nations requesting that body to take cognizance of the fact that the repression by this government against its colored nationals was in violation of this government's commitment to civilized mankind, the United Nations Charter, and more particularly, a violation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and of the United Nations Convention for the Prevention and Punishment of Genocide. We have prepared the petition which I shall present to you, but before doing so, I would like to give you a brief summary of the Genocide Convention. In time of peace, or in part, a national group as such. A, killing members of the group. B, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. C, deliberately inflicting on the this petition is attached. This will be the fourth occasion on which the black citizens of this country have applied to the United Nations. The first petition was presented by the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the National Negro Labor Council, and lastly, in 1951, the Civil Rights Congress, which presented to the world the petition, "We Charge Genocide, the Crime of Government Against the Negro People." The author of that petition is with us. We are hoping by the fall of this year to get a minimum of 1 million signatures. The co-chairmen of this committee to petition the United Nations are Arcia Davis, Angie Dickinson, Dick Gregory, Father James Groppe, and Bobby Rush. I would like, before I introduce some of the other commission, I suppose the group that has the longest record of being repressed in our country is the so-called American Indians. And here to tell us about that and to introduce Mrs. Carla Blakely of the Saulteaux tribe and the Indians of all tribes, I present to you now Brother Roger Littlehorn, Mohawk. Brother Littlehorn.
I'm Roger Littlehorn, and I'm here to present this. It's from the Indians of all tribes. The history of genocide in this country goes back to the earliest colonists, the Dutch colonists. New Amsterdam inaugurated the practice of paying bounty for Indian scalps. Top prices were paid for scalps of adult males, while those of women and children brought somewhat less. But then who knows who it was from? They all got top prices. As the population grew, more efficient methods of reducing the number of Indians were introduced. It was found that distributing free blankets infected with smallpox and other diseases rapidly reduced the number of Indians on the scene. Entire tribes were decimated, or worse, by the simple expedient of failing to deliver promised food supplies for the winter. These methods were supplemented by liberal. I heard this in Vietnam said about the Indians from one of the generals there. I heard it, and that hurt me. With the closing of the era of Indian wars, there was a return to systematic starvation and exposure to cold and disease. Today, infant mortality, suicide, and tuberculosis continue to now weigh at the Indian population at a rate which would be considered epidemic in any other segment of society. On the cultural level, Indians have been systematically dehumanized since the beginning, at first through the propaganda which portrayed the Indian as a savage, later through the official policies of the federal government and its Bureau of Indian Affairs. Indian culture and religion were systematically denigrated and eroded.
Badlands Reservation, now totally barren, could be the site of a brickyard, according to expert opinion. Unfortunately, the BIA prefers not to allow the Indians the use of their own money for such projects. The answer to this policy of theft and depression is direct action. Words unaccompanied by actions are meaningless. Indians intend to act by reclaiming unused federal lands, a right they acquired in a treaty in 1868. The occupation of Alcatraz is the key to this plan. The island, a barren chunk of rock, was never legally surrendered to the government in the first place. We have a clear case for the right to repossess it. The idea of Alcatraz, its symbolic significance, is that this land shall be the property of all Indians in perpetuity. Whatever use the island is eventually put to is irrelevant to the case. Meanwhile, the government stalls. What are they afraid of? The case of Stanley Island is
of genocide. I don't think I've ever participated in anything so extremely important, particularly to my Indian brother who is fighting to survive. And I feel that it is very, very important that all of us and all the decent thinking people in America immediately start working to bring the problem of genocide in America to the attention of all Americans.
On how many children are affected by lead poisoning and die every year. Nobody has to reach far in his memory to know what happens in our communities where dope addiction is rampant, where starvation is practiced, where starvation is the norm in the South and in the North. We feel that our government has a responsibility to its citizens, which it is quite capable of exercising, and therefore we petition the United Nations
against a country that is trying to do its best to help people.
I'll answer first to that. This is a very serious charge, and we only make it because we are very serious about the charge itself. I tried to indicate a moment ago that we are not charging the government with having set up a policy of going and with bayonet and gun and exterminating a group of people. We're charging the government with a racism that encourages its indifference to people on the basis of their color and on the basis of their race. The fact that the people on the reservations are Indians means that the government pays no attention to their plight. It just leaves them there. The fact that the youngsters in the ghettos are black means that the government reads the statistics about lead poisoning and is able not to do anything about it because they're only Negroes or niggers and we won't get disturbed. We know that if those were white kids who had the same problem, the government would move at once. Our object is to see to it that the government implements all immediately plans to help us in our plight. It is not enough to say that the government is already doing something. The government must do all it can, and unless and until it does all it can, we have a case. We would be fools to stop with a spoonful when our rights entitle us to everything that any other American citizen, both as individuals and as groups, entitle us to.
Cut.
Yes, that is for us to keep us quiet, and also for his people, the public, because the public don't know what is going on, and they'd like to know from news people, the news media. Says it is unfair, they've said to me, that they don't let an Alcatraz. That's all we want. We'll work hard to make that into something to help Indians, but they're not letting us have it. Right now they're doing it, and let the people know what Hickle is doing to the Indians there. And because they are starving right now, they've cut off their water supply, their electricity. Right today, this has happened to my people. Thank you.
Brother Greg?
Yes.
What your opinion is on violence and the means
By using the term genocide, you're using it in the broadest sense, but it's going to confuse some people. I'm sure perhaps in Kenya against the Asians, perhaps in Russia against the Jews, that sort of thing is in many, many nations. And aren't you concerned that by using that term it's going to confuse people and perhaps dilute your cause a little bit?
Would you like to answer that, Ms. Dixon?
Yes, Mr. Davis. We of the committee, who now petition the United Nations on the matter of genocide, work within the framework of the document itself. We are not afraid that we'll be misunderstood in any way. We as American blacks, we as American reds, browns, and yellows, have the basis in fact for our petition within the covenant. And let every nation understand we will be on an international scale in our petition. Let every nation understand that we have the right, and we demand now the right, to petition the United Nations for the eradication of genocide, and we make the demand that the government of the United States ratify that convention. This is our demand, this is our hope, and we do expect that we will maintain, and we will do it in a peaceful and nonviolent way. We are petitioning our government and the United Nations to eradicate genocide against all people.